Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to sort of use this slide to indicate who I am. I will be sharing this particular deck in my capacity as the Executive Director for Smart Cities Council, which is based out of the US and has presence in Australia, New Zealand, London, Poland, Turkey, and India. So I represent them in ASEAN. Concurrently, I'm also the chairman of the Smart Cities Network, which was formed back in 2017 and 18, in which we do smart cities projects. But my background is essentially the corporate sector. And my last corporate role was with IBM back in 2008 to 2013, in which the last 3 years have been involved with smart cities, smarter planet, and smarter building. So since Singapore launched Smart Nation in 2014, and subsequently in 2018, the ASEAN Smart Cities Network was established, and I have been pretty much involved with smart cities development over the last 4 to 5 years. So that's my background, and today, as Johan had said, I will share something which is quite untypical of what I would normally present in terms of smart cities, because most people would ask for, examples of smart city projects and what is a smart city and things like that. But today I will explain the difference between doing social good for citizen benefit and what does it take for projects to be bankable or bankable investment. And I have deliberately chosen this particular deck, this world map of the Roland Berger's survey, Smart City Strategy Index, outlining the 15 smarter cities around the world, with Vienna being the top and London being the second, and St. Albert third, in Canada, and Singapore being the fourth. And what's interesting and not usually found in a lot of other surveys of smart cities is China has got 5 within the top 15. It's a very interesting observation that I thought it might be useful for Johan's ecosystem. So let me start. This was a synopsis that I have proposed, and what I will do in the first part is the smart cities development, the use of IoT, and also how does citizen engagement is related to the smart city. And hence, I will explain what is a smart city as well, and how the IoT and the sensor network will play a critical role in collecting data and how it's related to the people. So that's the first thing that I will do. The next part of this session sharing is about the business model, both environmentally and financially, and how would cities and stakeholders strike a balance. Let me start. What is a smart city and how is it related to the citizen? The international standard for smart city, the ISO 37122, has this definition, right? A smart city essentially should have improvements in city services, and secondly, in providing quality of life. So when we refer to quality of life, it actually means the citizen. And there are hundreds of indicators related to this global definition. The second definition is by Smart Cities Council, where I'm part of. It says a smart city that uses information and communication technology to enhance livability, workability, and sustainability, and done by collecting, communicating, and crunching data. In short, we use the term tech and data for good, right? Doing good. So when we say tech and data for good. What do we mean by that? Livability describes the frame conditions of a decent life, and that means the citizen. Again, this smart city definition talks about the citizen. Let me go to the third definition. It's by a mayor of Rio de Janeiro, and he gave a TED talk back in 2012, right? That's more than 10 years ago. And I like this in particular because of the way that he has approached it quite simply. And he called it the 4 commandments of city. First, a city of the future has to be environmental friendly. That means that there has to be a focus in the environment, and putting that as the first priority differentiates Rio from the other cities. In other words, he reckoned that a smart city should have a public good associated with it. So a smart city shouldn't be totally private sector or finding bankability as a whole. There must be a public good. For example, in building this big park, eventually it would lower the temperature of the city by 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. And that means the people will benefit. So a smart city or city of the future has to be a public good by the city, with investment by the city, and thereby this has to be a city investment. Second, a city of the future has to deal with mobility and integration. And another public good, right? You look at most cities, roads, transportation system is key, especially in Asia. You get a fair bit of traffic problems in cities in Asia. So from 18% of their network connecting the population to 63%. So that means that the city has to deal with that public good. And that's why a lot of cities in Asia has to be infrastructure to start with, right? And that is a physical infrastructure for mobility. And hence, people will benefit. The third commandment is that a city of the future has to be socially integrated, which is something that I have advocated ever since more than 10 years ago, that what we call an inclusive smart cities. If we look at Rio de Janeiro as an example, they have, at that time, right, 2012, 6.3 million population, in which 1.4 lives in the favelas or the slums. So what they did was that they turned a building a bit run down into a slightly modern building with a childcare facility. So this means that the community will develop, providing care, education to develop, the young ones, and providing an opportunity for the slum areas to benefit as well. So that's the third commandment. Last but not least, a city of the future has to use technology to be present. And that's what most people would think that a smart city should be, that it should be laid down with technology. And this is the City Operations Center, and he presented in the US, in which his operations leader was explaining to him what's happening in the city. So that's what we understand today. Most people would understand a smart city to be with an operations center, a command center of sort, with a sensor network to capture situation awareness of different things. And in this case, the different vehicles that are used for waste management. So using that as an example, right, it provides better government services. So to a large extent, it is not wrong to say that a smart city should mostly be infrastructure development with heavy investment by the government. to provide better services and improving the lives of the people through public good. Now, let's take a look at this example in 2012, in which back in 2012, as I said, the Singapore government accepted, or rather they applied for the Smarter Cities Challenge in 2012, led by the Urban Redevelopment Authority and the Economic Development Authority, or URA and EDB. And 2 years later, the Singapore government announced through PM Lee the Smart Nation. And you can clearly see that this was the operations center, the Rio de Janeiro operations center. And a lot of people would not remember this, but I do, because this was one of the case examples that we shared with the Singapore government. It's an IBM example. So the Singapore government decided that they launched Smart Nation. So what does it mean to Singapore? For Singapore, this is on their website, a Smart Nation website. A Smart Nation is a Singapore where people will be more empowered to live meaningful and fulfilled lives enabled seamlessly by technology. So again, a smart city cannot get away from being enabled through technology, a sensor network of sort, but ultimately it should benefit the people. Another perspective of the Singapore government is that it should not only benefit the people, it should also be a place where the business community are involved, and hence it must provide an opportunity for the digital economy. And that's what we are trying to do now with the Punggol Digital District. And we want to connect with international partners to deliver solutions to benefit the people and the business sector. So in summary, the people means citizens. So in all of these 4 cases, a smart city or a smart nation has to benefit the people. And in Singapore's case, they broadly categorized into 3 areas: the government, the economy, and the society. But 2 years ago, the Singapore government decided that they would offer the Punggol Digital District as an example of a smart city in Singapore's contribution to the ASEAN Smart Cities Network. So there is a district in which the government had deliberately welcomed foreign investment into the district to create jobs, future jobs. And hence, this is the digital economy aspect of a smart city that is not found in a lot of smart cities. And that's why I believe that this approach of smart city with the business community is so important. Another important aspect, and I feel to enable smart cities, is the industry-academia partnership to develop future leaders, which I will share later. But let's step back and take a look at the sensor network that was done in Toronto. This was announced in 2020 in the midst of COVID, where Sidewalk Labs, which was done by Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, decided that despite the fact they had spent over $1 billion, that they decided not to proceed. They shut down the project. Right? Why? Right? Because it was claimed that they have faced community opposition. So this is a very important lesson, that while technology may be good, if you have community opposition, you do not get good feedback from the citizens, your smart city will not succeed. So this is just one example, right? The use of technology, however, is dependent on the citizens' acceptance. In the case of Canada, there are oppositions because of fear for privacy. But you look at Singapore, 4.5 years ago, the Singapore government awarded a 7.5 million smart lamppost project to ST Engineering, with the intent to have more than 100,000 smart lampposts throughout the island in order to provide situational awareness, detect problems, and respond quickly. In other words, provide better government services. But did we in Singapore hear a lot of opposition? Not quite. I had the privilege of visiting a showcase that they did of a smart lamppost. And according to ST Engineering and the government, it is a bit like the virtual police. The citizens should feel safe. If they walk at night remotely, this smart lamppost can become a safe haven for them because there'll be CCTV, within the lamppost. So I hope this first part has given you all an idea to the smart city. And let me go to the second part. The necessity to have a sustainable model financially and environmentally, and how would you strike the balance? And I have given a clue. The clue is to get the private sector involved through their investment. So first, how do we get them involved? First, it must deliver value, right? To create, deliver, and capture value without depleting or compromising the economic, natural, and social capital costs. So I will share a few examples. Jakarta is a good case, and I think amongst cities in ASEAN, Jakarta has perhaps the most mature model. And what do they have? The Jakarta Smart City Framework has got 3 values that they have. And it's no different from what I shared earlier. Quality of life, improving the people. Second, an economic growth to foster economic growth. And thirdly, sustainable environment. So what have they done? And I think this is a really good lesson for all smart cities. They position smart city as an ecosystem. And that ecosystem will allow them to create business models, different business models where they can start to charge. So they have the city data, and I will share the example from Thailand as well. Some people say data is the new oil. I have to qualify that good and reliable data is the new oil, not just any data. And then when you look at the model that they have, they start with smart city as a hub with different data being provided. And if you look at refer to the report by Roland Berger, the 2019 report, right? It's a very interesting report that they have outlined why some of those cities have, and one of that, Vienna, has got very open data. And then number 1, in terms of open data. And by the way, they won the World City Prize last year at the World City Summit. So the second area is that they offer it as a platform for co-creators. Application developers will basically be able to use the smart city with data as a platform. And then in providing services, they could possibly charge. And I will share the example for Singapore, where they will start to provide services that they will charge on a subscription mode. So the business model has always to be that it must have the basis of smart city with data. If you don't have data, it'll be extremely difficult to charge. So they have a roadmap for their smart city. This is in Bahasa, unfortunately, but you can understand, right? Thousands of records from Jakarta, and then they have a lab. They have a sandbox for people to try out, and their startup ecosystem is probably among the best in ASEAN. right? They have a very robust startup community, and they have different applications that they have done over the years. And they started quite a long time ago, about almost 10 years ago. And this is the monitoring room, and the Jakarta Smart City office, by the way, has got over 150 people, right? So it's a huge department within the Jakarta city. It reports straight to the governor, and amazing. So I've been there twice and have observed and done workshop for the Jakarta Smart City. Let's move on to Thailand. In Thailand, they have the Digital Economy Promotion Agency, DEPA in short, that is responsible for smart cities in Thailand. And this is what they wrote as the principles, the three basic principles of a smart city. A smart city should be citizen-centric. It should have the people, public, private partnership. And last, a smart city should be data-driven. So this was shared last month in the Philippines, where Dr. Non and myself were speakers for the Philippines government. And take a look at this particular map of Thailand. They have today, as of January 2023, 30 smart cities. Although officially in the ASEAN Smart Cities Network, they have only 3, which is Bangkok, Chonburi, and Phuket. And based on the 30 cities, their hope is to draw investment into the city, and I have converted to USD a total of 1.74 billion possible investment into these 30 cities. And the bulk of which the expected investment should come from the private sector. And I think that's the right model. When Michael Porter talks about creating shared value, he talks about shared value with the private sector, and the private sector is the one that has got lots of financial resources. So let me focus on just an example on how they will monetize this. This is a report that was done by the World Bank that due to flooding, 46.5 billion US dollars are lost because of flooding. And in Bangkok, more than 10 years ago, and it's still a problem in ASEAN cities. So what they have done is that they have an analytics platform with the data, with sensor network that captures data, good data, infrastructure data for drainage provided by the private sector. And that private sector provides, similar to the Jakarta example, an open data platform, the government services, and the data platform. And this is also where the business models will be created. So I had a discussion with Dr. Non. He says they are working on this business model right now. And they will create a digital twin to be seen at the operation center of the Bangkok City Command Center. So in short, the Thai smart city has people before tech, creating value and designing by data. So let me conclude the last point before I go to the industry academia partnership. What is Singapore doing? Some people may remember that Singapore has many years ago announced the Virtual Singapore, with the National Research Foundation investing over $70 million on the system. But they have, in the last few years, developed a different platform called OneMap 3D. And I have had the opportunity to work on the beta version when I conduct my class at BCA Academy, where my students will create 3D model of the city, of the building. So this OneMap 3D is a digital twin of the whole of Singapore, by the way. So as of now, they provide a few services for property agents and the business community to look at properties. And the key is to develop business model with the use case. What would provide value, and with the value, would people be willing to pay that as a service? So right now it's in early stage of developing that business model, and you can see here people explaining about what is a one map 3D and what kind of things can it do now. And as of now, it's just a 3D model with data about the property and the rental and things like that. So the particular investment, right? A smart city is huge. And this is a report by UBS talk about investment. And I have to say it will surely, a lot of that will be where the private sector will start to come in. So it's a huge market. And how do we go about doing it? So these are ideas that I would like to offer to the listeners here. First is A. So the ABC approach, it starts with A, awareness. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And more importantly, what are the problems that people are willing to address and pay for it? And in Singapore, sometimes we call it open innovation platform, where there will be a demand driver that's willing to fork out X thousands of dollars, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and pay for the solution, for the proposal to be offered. So in my capacity at the Smart Cities Council ASEAN Director, we would invite our members to develop the proposal, but it must be led by the leaders, city leaders, or the focus sector leaders, where we get partners to join in. That's A, awareness. Second, there has to be the building of capabilities through training. And when you train people, you build capabilities, and hence the investor community would like to see that if their startups get involved, they have to be compensated at the minimum. So B is for building capabilities. And last but not least, once the value is shown, demonstrated, you scale. And when you scale, you must have commitment with allocated budgets by the city and the country to do more. So we do have this ABC approach, the awareness, the building capabilities, and the commitment. And a lot of cities in Asia do not have a lot of funding. So thankfully, we have a partnership with global organizations, not to say that we can't go on our own, but for a lot of the government, they rely on global funding. So this is one example, a UN agency that we have a partnership from June last year at the World Urban Forum. Smart Cities Network, through my vice chair side, has actually signed an MOU to do what we call bankable projects. And that bankable projects are done through the city investment facility. So we have different implementation partners around the world. We're the only one in Asia with a UN Habitat City Investment Facility. And that feasibility means that we want to make sure that the projects that's been undertaken by the city must go through a feasibility phase, backed by funding. And that funding is where we invite the CSR dollars, the Donor Feasibility Fund, to fund it for each country. So our goal is to invite the large corporates through their CSR to initiate this funding. And we have right now 2 cities in Asia, ASEAN, that we are helping. One in the Philippines called Omok City, and the other is Iskandar across the causeway from Singapore. And what does it do, right? First, the funding should be for projects that are financeable. That means the urban infrastructure is possible to develop a business model. It must create positive social impact. It must be aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and thereby enabling resilience of the city and the communities. These are the 4 goals of that program. We're hoping that in the next 3 years, we hope to get at least 50 million to support 100 projects. And our strategy for the cities is to develop young leaders. I've already started in Singapore. We invite officials and domain experts to form either task force or working groups. Smart Cities Network is where I chair. We form working groups or Smart Cities Council, which I'm the executive director. We form task force. And our goal is to come up with bankable projects. And that bankable projects, I'm calling it the ASEAN Business Experience. Similar to what we are doing now with a university in the US called Georgetown University. They have the Global Business Experience. And we will do that with universities around the world. In ASEAN, and I'm happy to include in Hong Kong, in China. But right now it's the US, Georgetown University, McDonald School of Business. I'm a professor for Smart City in the National University of Management in Phnom Penh. In Singapore, I work closely with the Singapore Management University, Nanyang Technological University, and the Singapore University of Technology and Design. In Indonesia is the Institute of Technology Bandung. And of course, we have other universities that can get involved to scope the feasible project. And the example that I have here is for Cambodia and in Phnom Penh. I will be going back to Phnom Penh end of this month. The UN Economic and Social Commission has invited us, Smart Cities Council, to help to craft guidelines for the national smart city policy for Cambodia. But I've signed an MOU with them to establish a youth network witnessed by the Vice Governor, Nom Parat. And our goal is to develop youth leaders for smart city projects. And right now, I'm in the midst of this semester, March to June 2023, for smart city systems and management. Once a week, I teach 3 hours, where the current focus this year is on e-commerce. And the whole purpose is to get students to incubate ideas. And those ideas will be bankable. And that's why it's e-commerce with the ability to accept payment. So the model for the students is that the students through the ASEAN Business Challenge will do projects. They will become interns and staff, part-time staff or full-time staff when they graduate with the city. And that's where, again, similar model of A for awareness, B for building capabilities, and C for commitment, where we would attract investor community to invest in the projects. So this really sums up my short presentation of about 35 minutes or so. First, an imperative for smart cities to be citizen-centric. And I've given you examples of that. Second, without question, data, good data is needed for the development of smart cities. And third, we cannot do away with the public good aspect of smart cities. But the public good can support and drive the business model to get the private sector involved, where a larger investment will come in. And last but not least would be the development of youth leaders. as a sustainable model and also resources for the cities. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I will hand this time back to Johan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, KC. So that was, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's session, a very thorough and, shall I say, detailed presentation of all the work that you have been involved in, and a lot of interesting insights there. And I dare to say that it resonates extremely well with us at the Venturous Group. Although we are much more focused on China and you're looking more towards ASEAN, I dare to say that the words you were using consistently are very much the same as we do, which is to make cities smarter, and that means more livable, more sustainable, and productive. So what I would like to start out with is to ask you, KC, if you look at those three things, so making a city more sustainable, livable, and productive. If you look across the kind of countries where you are involved in, which of these three areas tends to be more important currently than the other two? So you can say people versus environment versus economy. Which of those three do you think is the most important for the various ASEAN countries you're working with at the time being?
Let me start with Singapore, right? It's one that I know the best. The Singapore government, when they launched the ASEAN Smart Cities Network in 2018, they put in their projects on digital payment, digital identity. It's a government projects. But in the last 2 years, they added the smart cities as a way to demonstrate that it is possible to get the private sector in. And that, I think, will be what cities should move towards. And I have to say that other than Jakarta and maybe a few leading cities like Davao City in the Philippines and Iskandar, Johor Bahru, and a few others, it's mostly infrastructure at the moment, public good, with less private sector still, right? Although the private sector developers are moving aggressively. So last week, as you know, I was in Vientiane, invited by the Laos government, the Vientiane government, where they wanted to get an idea to, and I was approached by 2 property developers. I was amazed. They were given concession of over 2,000 hectares, the private sector, and they are interested to really, and they call it smart city. So I will be having a deep discussion. So I think private sector has more interest to monetize their land, and it's a pure sell, right? It's a real estate business model. You sell property, you get, but not from a smart city angle. So a lot of property estate, they buy and sell offices, integrated development, but without much thought about the smart city. So 3 years ago, I was involved with a Vietnamese property developer, and they wanted to be smart. So the first thing that I do was to put in a command center, an integrated operations center. And likewise, I'm doing right now, a property developer in Bangladesh. I actually, as a freelance, I am open to work anywhere. Although officially I cover ASEAN, but I'm open to work anywhere. So the property developer in Bangladesh is interested. So they hired me to advise them how to monetize them as a smart development. But it's still early stage, Johan. They're not quite there yet. It's still infrastructure, and at best they are at the roadmap and the framework level, and maybe they have a command center, but it's purely to have situation awareness of the CCTV and know where things are. But that's about it.
Thanks for that, Casey. I will let the Benson come in here because similar to yourself, he has done a lot of thinking about smart cities. So I'm sure he has some reflections he would like to share. So over to you, Benson.
Well, KC, that was very inspiring. I was really listening to you and trying to get something out of it. I think the first thing I totally agree with you is that I see a city as a product. And the customer is the citizens. The reason I say that is, why do you come to the city, right? You know, Johan, why did you come to Singapore? It must have attracted you. And you basically, even though you don't know it, every day you're using Singapore, the environment, the economy, everything, right? And you are actually, in a sense, this is almost like a product that you use. So that's the first thing. So I can't agree with you more, KC, which is that I think most people forgot that ultimately it's for the citizens. If the citizens don't like it, just like the Google project, you're dead.
Yeah, correct.
So absolutely, you know, so the citizens are the customers and the city is a product. Now, I've been struggling a lot of time because everybody asks us, what is a smart city? Now, you inspired me just now. Now, the way I'm thinking is a city and a smart city, right? A phone and a smartphone. The reason I say that is that if you go back in the time tunnel 30 years and you just have a phone, okay? You then ask them, in 30 years' time, there's going to be something called a smartphone. They will not be able to imagine what a smartphone is. The reason is that phone is just for talking, okay? Where a smartphone, suddenly you can see things, you can transact, you can buy stuff. There's so many more things in the smart city. Now, the reason why I say that is that I always find it easy to use another analogy. So city to a smart city is like a phone to a smartphone. Now, what is now not available in a phone? The way you use it are very different, not just talking. You have 1,000 more ways to use the phone, okay? So I think that smart cities, there'll be so many new things that people never even imagined you can use on the city, okay? Just like a phone, okay? That's number one. Number two, if you now look at, we talked about the ecosystem. There's so many new business models like apps, app stores, you know, the fact that you can just pay for stuff. All of this business model is totally not on the phone, okay? So that's another thing that I think, just like what you said, you know, you are trying to draw out that map of how do we make it monetizable. Effectively, what you're saying is that we need to build, you know, business models around it,
right,
so that people can monetize. Well, people can make money.
Yeah.
Right? Why do you come to the city? If you can't make money in Singapore, you ain't going to be here. Why the hell do I pay COE for my car? It's so expensive. Why? Because I'm going to make money, and I'm going to make money more than the cost I have to bear, you know, expensive properties and stuff. So that's the second point, which is that I think, just like what you said, I think people come to cities to make money, right? No? Why not? Why do you stay in the city if you're not going to make money? I mean, you know, countryside is great, right? Blue sky, clean air, you know, no traffic jam. Why the hell do I do city? It has to be something like that. So again, I think, you know, very inspired by what you said. But what I'm saying is that I think people need to compare the phone with the smartphone and decide what is not there. You know, you already started alluding to business models and other stuff. And that's exactly what Venturous is trying to do, which is think truly out of the box. What is the difference between a building, a smart building, a city and a smart city, a phone and a smartphone, you know, all of these new business models? Who are the leaders? You mentioned about leaders. I think absolutely. It's the leaders who will create all the fantastic things, the Steve Jobs of smart city world, right? You know, the Mark Zuckerberg, and then the Elon Musk, who will create things that are just completely amazing. So again, very inspired by your talk. And I think a lot of people, when they only think about smart city, they only think, oh, add technology. I think that is only a tiny little bit, just like a phone and a smartphone. If you only think about the technology inside the phone, you're not getting it, right? Anyway, Johan, so that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Benson. Any comments from you, KC, on that?
Well, I mean, it has been projected, right? There's going to be an increase on people moving to cities. And largely, I think, if you earn money, to put it, is to earn a living, right? So a lot of people see better prospects to earn a living in a city, and hence, it's inevitable. The migration to cities will continue. In ASEAN, is projected, in the next few years, and 2030, 90 million, right, will move to cities. So that's an additional 90 million. So the city has to cope. And I mean, one comment that I said about what is a smart city versus a city. So the technology-wise, I would usually refer to a city that's connected is digitally connected, but it's not smart yet. To be smart, you must have the additional 2 components. First, you must have a sensor network to capture data.
Yes, absolutely.
So a smart city must capture data, which is why I had emphasized with examples of the data in Thailand as an example, right? And why Jakarta is putting in so much effort. These are the leaders in ASEAN when it comes to smart city. And of course, Singapore has got, tons of data sets. So that's one. The second, with the data, reliable data, you got to transpose it into a situation awareness to know where the data is located. And that's why I think a digital twin platform is mandatory for any smart city, that has to have an operational digital twin in a command center that can analyze the data as a second component. So a smart city must have, number one, a data acquisition that when it be captured, to be visible and to be able to analyze, so that it provides the AI, artificial intelligence, and the data to make intelligent decisions. So that's the technology side of a smart city. The second part, which I seldom talk about, and actually is about structure. A lot of people would think that a smart city is a IT project. So Singapore made the same mistake. They started in 2014 with IDA, the Infocom Development Authority. And IDA did the Smart Nation Sensor Network. They capture data, fine, it's an IT project. But they could not move very far. So in 2017, in May 2017, the Singapore government, PM Lee, announced the formation of the Smart Nation Digital Government Group, comprising GovTech, Government Technology, and the Smart Nation Digital Government Office, engaging with the business community and the society. So it's only after they form this Smart Nation Digital Government Group that there's a proper budget and centralized and coordinated effort for a smart city. And this is where we read the report by Roland Berger. Vienna has that, London has that, Singapore has that. A smart city must have a total integrated model where the intergovernment agencies should talk to each other. And that's lacking in a lot of smart cities today. They don't talk to each other. So that is the part that a lot of people You know, when I presented about a year or two ago to the Vietnamese city government, they have a policy for smart city mandated. The local government must do that. But I say there must be a centralized national body reporting to the Prime Minister of Vietnam or President of Vietnam in order for them to move ahead. And they were not able to do that. So I thought this is to give you that perspective that the structure side is the more difficult side because it deals with people.
I love what you said, KC. The structure is so important.
Yeah.
Never thought of it that way. So thank you. We thought of it as integration is key because we think one of the negative thing, a city is not a smart city is when you have a lot of what we call data islands.
Yeah.
They are isolated pockets of data that don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And so we have always thought of it as integration, but I think you use a much better word, structure. Structure interconnects everything, and
correct.
by definition is integrated.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I think also, one of our biggest investment happened to be in a system integration company that sort of started by doing technology systems, then do corporate systems, and now do city systems. And without knowing it, people always thought of system integrators as boring dinosaur, outsourcing companies. I think it has come full circle now. I think system integration will be the next generation. Just the other day, Alibaba announced that they are going to put their own version of ChatGPT to all their 50 products. What it really means is that they are system integrating all the 50 products.
Yep.
So suddenly, just like what you said, the structure and the integration comes back into center stage. Very, very interesting. Thank you. I never thought of it that way. I love what you said. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are coming to an end of today's session. So question for you, KC, is there anything else you would like to say on final notes?
Well, I think, Johan, right, as you know, and we spoke about it, there should be a ongoing, collaboration that we have, and we look forward to perhaps at some point, meet Benson in Singapore the next time he comes back.
Yeah, love to meet you.
I will make that happen.
That's all from me.
Thank you so much. So on that note, thank you, Benson, and thank you to you, KC, in particular, for presenting today.
You're most welcome.
Have a good day, everyone.
Take care. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you, KC. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.